Leather boots on courtroom floors, 26 years behind closed doors. Files marked confidential, truth suppressed, but I write in with justice on my chest. From crime scene to courtroom, I've seen it all. I see my priest and wait for the judge's gavel to fall. Every child matters, no case too small. I feel their pain and hear their frightened call. A voice for the voiceless, I won't let go. I speak the truth, they need to know. This is crime, courtroom confidential. Silence breaks and hearts are hurt. We fight for the ones the system never saw. Every story, every word, no secrets buried, no pain ignored. Justice rides in bold and raw. This is truth, unfiltered, and I'm not backing off. My hair prayer hums beneath the sky. Courtroom robe and a watchful eye. Tattoos tell stories, scars that stay. I've lived alone in every way. From crime scene to courtroom, I've seen it all. I say my piece and wait for the judge's gavel to fall. Every child matters, no case too small. I feel their pain and their frightened call. A voice for the voiceless, I won't let go. I speak the truth, they need to know. This is crime, courtroom confidential, where silence breaks and hearts are hurt. We fight for the ones the system never saw. Every story, every word, no secrets buried, no pain ignored. Justice rides in bold and raw. This is truth, unfiltered, and I'm not backing off. Pansy by my side, honey in the field. I carry the weight that others conceal. Behind the bench, behind the fear, I've held the line year after year. Not just facts, but human lives. We investigate and dig where darkness resides. Every case, a sacred vow to find the truth, starting now. This is crime, courtroom confidential, where silence breaks and hearts are hurt. From crime scene to courtroom, we stand tall. Every time, let us go and stay true. Never gain, leave you stand. You'll leverage no and found. Every story unfiltered, and I'm not backing off. A voice for the voiceless, truth on the line. We seek justice and keep evil confined. This is true, unfiltered, and I'm not backing off.
Have I just been muted for the entire of that time? Or did I mute it just as I spoke at the last minute? Well, oh well. So today I want to talk about RCMP search dogs. Michelle After Dark has done a video today, which I think she's got much greater knowledge in terms of scent work with dogs. So we've had sight hounds and Great Danes and Spaniels and things, but I've never really done any scent work with any of my dogs. So I'll completely defer to her greater knowledge. So I would suggest that you look at today's video that she did. So that's Michelle After Dark. But I still wanted to touch on the subject because it was already in the plan. And I think there's some things that are case specific that she's probably touched on across her videos, but I think it's worth really kind of hammering home, particularly based on what we know from the court documents as well. So in Lilly and Jack's case, the RCMP deployed scent dogs, we know this, but not specialised cadaver dogs. And that distinction matters because even though Canadian scent dogs are trained to detect human remains, they're not as effective as cadaver dogs specifically. And also there are different types of scent dogs for search and rescue. What the court documents say is that they brought in heavy urban scent dogs. And that's likely to be dogs who will use a mixture of air scenting and ground scenting. And that makes them slightly more effective than just one or the other because it means that they're doing the multitasking essentially and they're using all the things that they've got available to them. So did the dogs find anything? And if they didn't, what does that mean? So 2 children vanish from their home in rural Nova Scotia and no trace is found. No scent whatsoever. We've not found any of their clothing, the only item being a piece of a blanket that the parents say belonged to Lilly, although whether Daniel first said it didn't is question mark. And Malehya, the mother, indicated that it was originally used daily by Lilly. She used to carry it round with her. But that after that, she didn't want it anymore, so they used it to block a draft across one of the doors. And when Daniel was putting it up at the doorway, so he was hanging it across the doorway so that it blocked a draft, a bit like a curtain. And when he was putting it up, it ripped. Malehya doesn't identify, nor does anybody appear to ask her, what happened to that piece that was ripped off. So where was it? Where was it stored? Could Lilly or Jack have gained access to it on the morning that they disappeared? But that once the weather, she also said, once the weather got better, she then discarded the blanket from across the door because it was ripped and it was thrown away about a week before. Now, Daniel says he threw it away. Janie says she saw Daniel throw it away. Malehya says she threw it in the trash. So again, a level of inconsistency there, but that was the only item found. And then there was a clump of footprints, one of which was a size 11 boot print on the pipeline trail, very close to where the blanket was found. So, and we'll listen to some dispatch audio of when those boot prints were found and what they did as a result of that. But let's start with the very basics. RCMP scent dogs are trained to track live human scent. So that's based on clothing, toys, or bedding. They'd be given that as a thing to obtain the smell, understand what they're searching for, and then they're set off to track that scent. I'll come to your questions in a minute, guys. But since 2016, all of the RCMP's dogs have been trained to detect the scent of human remains. That means that they can alert to decomposition, but they're not as specialised as cadaver dogs, whose sole focus is on locating death, the scent of death, essentially. The difference isn't just in the training, though, it's in the deployment. So a cadaver dog, that's all they do, is search for the scent of death. So they know that if they're being asked to undertake a task, that's what they're looking for. For the general canine units, then what they're looking for will depend on the commands that they're given, because the dog's not going to know what they need to look for on that given day, unless they're given appropriate commands and appropriate markers to detect. So live scent pass, that would involve tracking from a known location using personal items. So they'd start at the home, try and track outwards. Or if they find, for example, the boot prints, they'd start at the boot prints and try and track outwards. A decomposition pass would involve search for the chemical markers of death. So the question becomes, did RCMP do both of those things, or only use the dogs as normal canine search units? And the answer is we don't know. So let's just have a look at who's here. And if anybody's got any specific questions on that part before we move on. Thanks, EB. All I want to do really is try and share the information and knowledge that I do have, and if it can help people to understand what's happening in an investigation, then that's the key, really. Hi, Kimmer. This isn't going to be a very long live, as you can hear. I'm getting a little bit germy, I think. Yeah, so at the beginning I was muted, everybody. Michelle's video today was really good, actually, and it was really kind of a good way to break it down, looking at the different training videos that people were doing, because I think sometimes it's easier to understand it if you watch it in process. So I was really impressed anyway. But I generally am when she's describing the anything to do with the search dogs. Hi, Cynthia. Polar Vortex. So Kimmer is asking, off topic, but a polygraph's considered accurate more often than not. Allegedly given more than one, and passed all of them. Hard to figure. The answer is, it depends who you ask. It depends on a lot of factors. So it depends on the experience level and skill of the polygrapher. it depends on the questions that are asked and whether they're properly broken down to narrow someone's ability to answer in a way that is truthful, so they're not going to show the signs in their physiology of deception, but isn't giving an accurate account. So my biggest or most obvious example in this case is that Daniel says he was asked, "Did you kill Jack and Lilly?" The answer to that could be no. And he's completely truthful, because one was an accident and the other one was because they got so wound up and hysterical about the accident involving the first one that it followed suit. It could be that they got into substances in the house, and so he doesn't believe that he physically killed them, because even though it's his substances, that doesn't equate to culpability in his mind. So there are ways that people answer questions that allow them to answer and demonstrate truthfulness if the questions are not properly framed. So they need to be asked about each individual child and about the various options of how they died. So was it something that you did? Was it something that somebody else in the house did? Was it an accident? Was it because there was something in the environment that caused it? So you have to be very specific about what you're asking, whilst being open enough that they find it hard to answer in the negative and demonstrate truthfulness if they are guilty or have any guilty knowledge. But also, it's affected by the individual person. So if someone's got a personality type that is prone to lying on a regular basis, they won't demonstrate deceptive markers because they lie all the time. Everybody knows when I'm lying because I can't do it very effectively. And I know that people always say, look, lawyers, they lie for a living. We don't. And certainly in the UK, the majority of us take very seriously our duty to the court, which is the overriding duty that we have. It's not to our client, it's to the court and to justice. So we have to be honest. We can't misconstrue things. But there is an art in how you ask people questions that can lead them down a path and make them find it very hard to back out of those questions. So the answer is, it's not as simple as the more often than not reliable. It could be that this particular polygrapher isn't very experienced, or it could be that their questions just didn't match the particular circumstances of this case particularly well. But my viewpoint on it is it's interesting information to have, but I would never hang my hat one way or the other on a polygraph result. They're not used in court for a specific reason, and that is they're not reliable enough to hang your hat on. Otherwise, they would be used. Hope that helps. Very long-winded way of saying they're not particularly reliable. Yeah, this is information that I've found from researching Polar about the commands to the canines. I would be really interested actually in Michelle's take on this, Michelle After Dark, because she's probably going to know much more about how that works in practice than I do, and probably ever will. Yeah, I don't know why people thought that dogs weren't used. It's very clear from and I'm going to play some of the dispatch audio in a bit that demonstrates that they definitely were used. But how effectively is the question, I suppose. And when you listen to the dispatch audio, it's quite hard to grapple with quite what a big operation it was, being run by people who aren't used to running big operations. So you're in a really rural area and then you get something this serious. It's not the same as it would be for a city major crime unit who are used to dealing with homicides every single day, or with missing people every single day, because it's so rife in the area that they are based. I live in the northwest of England, in a town called Manchester, that is sometimes described as Gunchester. So the police around here, it wouldn't even faze them what happened with Jack and Lily. They'd just be like cracking on with it and know exactly what they needed to do. But I can see why it would be different in somewhere like the middle of nowhere in Nova Scotia. So where do we go from here, Cynthia? The answer is, I think the police probably have more of an idea or view about what has happened than they are prepared to put in court documents that are sworn affidavits and put before the court. So they will be following the leads that come in based on the sum total of all of their knowledge. And it's really hard for people who aren't in law enforcement to kind of understand the process that they go through, where they will have a team of people who are regularly kind of getting into a huddle and talking about what are the most likely theories, what theories have they got, what possibilities of things are there that they've not looked at yet. Is there anything out of all of the tips that have come in the last week that we need to focus on more? So that's a kind of an ongoing process that they go through. And I think I am concerned that there is a risk that this case will go cold. And that's because the quality of any evidence that might have been available at the start of the case that wasn't dealt with appropriately because the case wasn't treated as a potential crime scene in terms of the property, that the quality of that evidence is going to be so dramatically reduced that it might make it quite hard for them to get anywhere. That being said, often there are cases where it's very, very quiet on the home front. We hear nothing, and then all of a sudden, boom, something happens, and it's because they're not going to tell us the important stuff. If they're in the kind of place where they can rely on these privacy laws and it's not somewhere like the Sunshine State, then they're going to use it because it's very easy to be derailed if you let out of the bag what you know. In the UK, the police, they keep things so close to the chest. I mean, when I was doing defence work, I would go to the police station after someone's been arrested and say, give me the advance disclosure, and they'd give you a portion, a really small proportion of what they had. And they'd then like bring things out in the interview, and you'd have to stop the interview there and then to have a conversation with the person, because that's the first you've heard about that information. But they're allowed to do that, because they want to see the person's reaction when they first find out about it, not the second reaction after the lawyer's already told them what they've got. So I've got hope that we will get a resolution to it. Yeah, my husband is a huge Manchester United fan, Kimmer, and it's a big part of Manchester. We've got two big teams that rival each other, Manchester United, Manchester City. And the people that I know are split down the middle, which makes life very interesting sometimes when you're out socialising. But yeah, it's a big city. It's certainly got its problems in terms of crime. There's quite a big organised crime group action in and around Manchester, so not necessarily in the city centre, but in the suburbs around Manchester. And I've had the great fun of defending a few of them over the years. Certainly wouldn't only be locking my door with a wrench. Let's describe it like that. And yeah, I think they're keeping it classed as a missing persons investigation on paper for a reason, and that is there's a much easier bar to get over for getting documents and records and things of people. But the reality is it's a dual investigation, so they'll be looking at it from the point of view of kids go missing because they've wandered off and something has happened, and they're running that parallel and trying to follow all the leads to see where it takes them. I'd love to know the up-to-date position in terms of what they have, because the reality is the information that they've disclosed, all it is the same document that's been sent to each of the companies they're asking for records from. But as time's gone on, they've added to that document to update it on things that have happened. But so much of it is redacted, and some stuff isn't even mentioned. So like they don't touch on the forensic results for the blanket. They redact everything to do with the mobile phone records. They redact the polygraph questions. Any of the actual results of the investigation where there might be some information that's relevant to the investigation, they've redacted it. So we literally don't know what they have at all. In any event, let's get back to dogs. So what do we know about the search in relation to Jack and Lily specifically? So according to the RCMP reports that have been provided across time, it's included, we know there was about 160 people doing ground search and rescue, but there were a number of canine units that were present during the first few days. They were being directed to go and check out specific areas where things of interest were found. What I can't find on the dispatch audio, which is our most detailed information about the dog's involvement, is anything to do with them going into the home or even on the grounds of the home. And that will be not necessarily because it didn't happen, it will be because that's at ground zero. So they don't need to say over radio what they need the person to do because they're there with them. Now, the dogs did what are called hasty passes. So they did like a general sweep of the area around the home initially. So they're not doing a very kind of set gridded search of any kind. They're just doing a general sweep of the area around, see what the dogs can pick up. And at that point, they're more likely to be using air scent. But then they were taken to individual spots where there were points of interest. So they were taken to where the star was found on the bridge, the blanket, the footprints, heat signatures that turned out to be black swans, I think, like painted statues of black swans that were maintaining heat. But there is reference to canine units being on the property. So we can assume that they used them while they were on the property. I have not seen anywhere that it says, and I'm happy to be corrected if I've missed it, but I've not seen anywhere that it says that the dogs specifically went inside either of the properties, Janie's camper or the main trailer. The police dogs I'm talking about. So the more methodical sweeps that followed didn't pick any scent up, which is disheartening because we know that the boot print matches the size of Lily's boot. And Kimmer, I think it was you that said yesterday, Lily is in fact a size 11 and Malehya had got it wrong, and you're absolutely right. I got towards the end of the documents and I found that part. So they identified it by the size number that she'd purchased, which was not in Canadian sizing. So it was a size 29 at Walmart, which is a size 11. So we know that it matches size-wise, but then there's no scent around it, and the line trail is rough ground, so it retained scent much more effectively than if it was on a tarmac road, for example. It's a pipeline trail, so it's got trees either side, which means it's slightly sheltered as well from the wind, so that won't have dispersed the scent as much. So it strikes me that that boot print is a red herring, because I'd be really surprised if there wasn't a scent there if they had have walked up that trail. So we also know that they brought the dogs back between the 17th and 19th of May. So it tells us that at page 511 of the court documents. And it says they conducted dog searches around the area of Jack and Lily's residence between the 17th and 19th of May. And it also tells us at page 516 that Corporal Martin and his dog were called to the area where the pink blanket was found, 1 kilometre from the family home on Lansdowne Station Road at the junction with the pipeline trail. He walked for about 1 kilometre in the area on the pipeline trail and did not pick up a scent to complete a track. So it's not picked up a scent, couldn't follow a track. It was literally they couldn't pick up a scent to be able to start and follow a track. So things that aren't clear. Did the dogs enter the actual trailer and camper? Were decomposition passes conducted or only live scent tracking? I'm going to play the clips towards the end because I think that probably makes the most sense. So what can we take from, actually no, I'm going to stick with the original plan. I'm going to play the things for you now. So let me pull up these audio tracks. She says, okay, so I've got a few different clips to play for you guys, so bear with me as I try and stop and start it to play the right clips, as I'm not clever enough to extract them and have them all in one space for you.
Sure. We're off on 6. Joe, 51 kilo 6, I'm on 6. I'm 4 minutes out. I'm just at 8:17. Kilo 9, second dog, leaving HRM now, also on 6.
Okay, so that was 2 K9 units. One was already en route, one was leaving base. That was on the 2nd of May in the morning. And then
Mason, you copy?
Just to confirm, both kilo dogs on scene there? If y'all can hear me there, are you guys on scene?
Kilo 6 is on scene, and Kilo 9 till 17.
That works, thank you.
I'll pass from Patrol 4.
and so again, we know that that's 2 K9 units that were on scene, and they're actually talking about actually at the property, those 2. So that's it for that video. Let me pull up the next one. There's a bit more on this one.
Something like Seal Island Bridge. I should see how close the bridges are to the residents.
Do we know if any of the kids had like stickers on their backpacks? We found a little shiny star sticker over here by the bridge. Over. Stand by. That's all my quick answer. Stickers for strawberries. You say you found a star? Yeah, it's like a holographic little star over.
I know there's a lake nearby.
So we're told that a K9 unit actually attended there. Something that's also referred to, but I'm not going to play the clip because it's really long and very confusing because they were having a row over the dispatch audio, was that there was 2 T-shirts on the side of the road and a piece of purple fabric. Now, they were checked by a K9 unit and cleared on the 2nd of May. On the 3rd of May, because nobody had marked that they had been checked and cleared, somebody else found them. And then there was a bit of a row that went over the dispatch audio about whether they needed a K9 unit to go at that exact moment. Was somebody to come off task and go there? Or did people need to wait and be sent from the command unit? And this is where you get quite a good impression of the fact that it's not the most organised of searches, in terms of there was clearly a lot for them to coordinate. Not everybody was completely on board with knowing exactly what they were doing. Oh, 38 is the next one. I really need to learn how to extract bits of video properly, because I am not that good at anything like that.
This is Colchester Base calling the K9 unit tasked to investigate the blanket. Do you copy? Over.
True crime audio.
This is Bravo 3. I was with Kilo 2 like 3 seconds ago. He went towards the main road there. We're done at that site. The dog didn't get a track or anything like that. Bravo 3 sees the blanket.
3, this is command. Can I get an updated position, please? Over.
Yeah, Crystal, it's Scott here. Thanks. It's starting to rain here pretty bad. I'm not sure how good the drone will be.
So we establish with this piece that the dogs did go and have a look at where the blanket was found. And then we're going to do something a bit more fun as well when we've dealt with this bit. Since we're talking about dogs, I'm going to introduce you to Pansy.
Nice. Thank you. 10-4. Thank you.
G-Star Command, G-Star K9. We just brought the dog down for a quick recce of the area where those heat signatures were. He's indicating that we're at on the river. We're just wondering if we're in the same area that was just searched.
Now, we can't be confused about whether or not the dog's indicating while he's speaking, because we can hear him in the background.
Barking enough, I couldn't quite make up that. I don't think we got a team in there anymore.
G-Star Command, Team 119. G-Star K9, just the dog's indicating where we're at on the river here, and we're just curious if this is the same area that we just had with the heat signature. Because if he's picking up on the team that was just here, then that would make sense over.
You copying that, K9? All right. Okay, Todd. You're back on the highway, right? On the road? Yeah, K9, they're back up on the road. On the Logham Town Road, whatever. They're back on the road. The other team that was just there. You copy that, K9? That the team that was up there at the last coordinates looking for the heat spot there, they're back on the road.
G-Star Command, G-Star K9. We see their headlamps as they were taking off. Just want to make sure that they were on the opposite side of the river.
You're copying this. You're on the south side of the river, not the north side. That K9, they're on the south side of the river. That K9, they stay on the south side of the river. They can go the other side.
G-Star Command, G-Star K9, sorry to do a quick battery change on the radio. Copy that. We're on the opposite side of the river, so it was like the other team that the dog was indicating on over.
As far as I know, there was nobody up there besides that team when they're on the south side. Yeah, they remember seeing your headlights too, so they seen you guys. Did any of the...
So we know that they were going to each of the places where heat signatures had been found. But you can hear from that audio, it's not the most organised of operations. I'm going to describe it like that. I think it was a bit chaotic. There was hundreds of people there, and it's a big area to try and search without the same kind of markers that you can use and landmarks to split things up by when you're in the middle of nowhere and it's just all trees. So next, there's just one more portion right near the end of this video.
The RCMP police dog. I'm on task 309. We do have some clear footprints,
Plunder.
probably 3/4 of the way up the gas line. Just want to give you guys that update right now.
Up line?
Yeah, 10-4. Where my task is, about 3/4 of the way to my final waypoint. There are clear footprints heading towards my waypoint. When I got to my waypoint, there was nothing past that I could observe, though.
309, I'll relay to command. Please stand by. Task 309, this is Colchester Command. Do you copy? Over.
Yeah, go ahead.
309, command is requesting a photograph be taken and sent to the command phone if possible, if there's self-service. And could you please send the coordinates for those prints? Over.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be back at my truck in about 30 seconds. I'll be quickly.
309, copy that. We'll see you shortly.
Alma, drop team.
So with that one, it's not clear if that is actually a K9 unit or if that's just an officer on foot. And I can't find any other reference in the dispatch audio to the boot prints, but we have heard in one of the RCMP updates that dogs did search that area. So I think the difficulty that we had was Plunder was right on with tuning into the dispatch audio, listening for it, and she published what she'd heard really quickly. And I think they then realised that they needed to move to a private, an encrypted station because people would be listening in because it's a high profile case. But in terms of the dispatch audio, Plunder's the only person that I know that has obtained it, listened to it and published it. So great thanks to her. She always does a really great job with her freedom of information requests and things. So do go over and listen to the entire thing. I think there's 3 separate videos that she's done all about the audio dispatch. And she talks through what she hears as well as being able to just listen to it. And I've been through and looked for all of the dog references and that's all I could find. But I think they will have been working predominantly right around the area of the property. And as I say, they won't have needed to use the dispatch radio for that. So that's what we can glean from that audio. So what can we take from what the dogs did or didn't find? Well, didn't find because they didn't really find anything at all. First, there was no confirmed scent trail reported except a scent on the driveway. Now, that's not a surprise because they walk up and down that driveway every day to get on the school bus, and you build up a residual scent in places that you spend a lot of time. So as you're moving about, you're laying down a scent wherever you are. So you're shedding skin cells, you're losing sweat and other kind of ways that you can drop scent. And that it builds up, particularly on something like their driveway, which is a very rough surface, rough natural surface. Excuse me. So what does that tell us? It suggests either the children didn't leave the property on foot because the natural terrain around the home is a surface that's likely to retain scent well, as opposed to man-made surfaces like tarmac roads. The main road in front of them is tarmacked, but it does have sections at the side that are not. So rather than a pavement area, pedestrian area, it's just dirt at the side of the road. So so either they didn't leave on foot, or the scent was disrupted by weather, contamination, change in surface, or just by virtue of time passing. But we know that dogs were on site by before 11 a.m. So the time aspect doesn't strike me as the accurate explanation. I don't think it rained in that period from the early morning when the children were reported as having wandered away and when the canine officers got there. And yeah, for me, I think in the woods, on the pipeline trail, they would have left a scent without a shadow of a doubt. The fact that they didn't says to me they weren't there. Particularly when we know, and I think this is something that maybe people haven't really cottoned onto, is obviously if you take 10, so Michelle described it as this, if you take 10 showers a day to mask your own scent, natural scent, you're still not going to defeat a dog, because they've got like millions of olfactory sensors in the nose, as opposed to us who've got about 200,000 or something. Their estimates of the figures, I can't remember exactly what she said. But these children hadn't showered 10 times during the day. These children had gone to bed in their daytime clothes from the night before, if what the parents say is accurate. So they'd spent all day going to places. They'd come home, they'd potentially played out, but the parents weren't sure. Then they'd gone to bed in their day clothes. And Malehya says in her statement to the police, she doesn't believe that they got changed before they left the property in the morning, which means that they're in a day and night old clothes and they haven't showered in that time frame. So they would have left a scent. And polar vortex, yeah, you're right, dogs live to sniff. They really, really do. I've never, ever seen a dog who you take out for a walk and they don't want to just sniff. That's what they want to do. In the garden, that's all they want to do is sniff around. Maybe dig for something that they've buried that they can smell and they've remembered that it's there. But again, that's still going off the sense of smell. So from my perspective, that lends weight to the idea that they didn't walk off the property. Now, in terms of decomposition alerts, we don't know if they did any decomposition passes, but also, even if they did, they're not necessarily going to tell us the results. But from what I have heard on the dispatch audio, from what I've seen in all of the RCMP reports that we've got and the papers that we've got, there is no indication that they did that, which concerns me massively. It concerns me just as much as allowing lots of people to come to the property and trample all over it without going in, shutting it down, treating it like a forensic crime scene. You're not saying a crime's been committed, you're ruling that out. And then is the only time that you can do it properly. no point in waiting, because it gives people time to hide things, clean things, disguise things by virtue of the fact that it's just been walked over, trampled over, people have picked things up, put things down, all of those things. So I'll give an example of another case that's happened this week. So there is a little girl called Renesmee Utsi who, yes, she was named apparently after the Twilight character that is the child of Bella and the vampire, whose name has just completely gone out of my head. She was reported missing at about noon. I think it was 12:45. And the reports were that she'd been seen in her room at 2 a.m, but that her electronic devices had been used in the house at between 5 and 6 a.m. Then nobody noticed until 12:40 p.m. that she wasn't there. These children were supposed to be being homeschooled, so one asked the question, why had nobody checked if she was still in the property? But she was reported missing. An endangered child alert went out, the same as it did with Lilly and Jack. The police went to the property. They closed it down as a crime scene. They properly interrogated each of the some reports say foster parents, some reports say adopted parents, and I can't quite work out which, but they were family members of the mother. And then they spoke to the children as well. And because they'd gone through that process, they also immediately towed the vehicle from the property and had that processed. Within 24 hours, the body had been found and the parents had been arrested on suspicion of her death, causing her death. So that's how you do it, and do it effectively. How it was done here is not how you do it effectively. And I'll die on my sword on that point. So what could it mean that we've got no information about decomposition passes? Well, it could mean that they weren't asked to do that search. It could mean that the scent was too faint. For example, if the children were deceased and very quickly moved from the property, the true smell of decomposition doesn't begin until about 2 hours after death. Some research studies say that it can start developing within minutes, but actually the proper decomposition process takes a while to begin. And it's once the body starts leaking all of the various things that it does at that point, not to get too graphic, is when you start to leave the scent available for something to pick up. But if they are very quickly kind of bundled up and transported away, then the scent might be too faint or not there at all. There could be no remains present. There could be that there were alerts, but they've not been publicised. So there are a few options there, but I don't think there were any passes, never mind any alerts. There was a former RCMP dog handler that came on to one channel and described the case as really strange. He's called Glenn Brown, and he said, I find it hard to believe that a 6 and 4-year-old would just disappear like that. And the absence of scent is itself a clue. Now, I've said that all along. I've said the absence of evidence is evidence in itself, and that's something that was touched upon by a former homicide detective and Jennifer Coffindaffer on her channel a couple of nights ago. Jennifer is a former FBI agent. The homicide detective is an extremely experienced, many years as a homicide detective, now retired. And they were discussing Sebastian Rogers, but they touched on this case very briefly. But simply to say that in these types of cases, so there was this case, they talked about Summer and they talked about Sebastian very briefly. Sometimes the rule is that the lack of evidence is in fact evidence where somebody disappears without a trace, because it's not physically possible that people just disappear off the face of the earth. Now, if the dogs didn't even enter the trailer or the camper and they weren't given decomposition commands, then we can't say that there's been a truly exhaustive search of those premises. Because scent dogs are powerful, but only when they're used with precision. And in a case where every minute matters, every missed pass is a missed opportunity. And if they went back now, a specialised cadaver dog would probably still pick up decomposition scent if there was one. But not necessarily, because we're 4 months down the line. But it isn't just about the dogs, it's about protocol and it's about transparency. And I know that the RCMP have the same rules as the UK in the sense of they don't need to give us anything. They could keep completely quiet. But it's in the public interest for people to know what's happened to these children. The RCMP says that there are over 800 tasks currently underway in relation to the investigation. And that's a big number. But if you make fundamental errors at the very beginning of an investigation, you're always going to be playing catch up. So if the canine deployment wasn't comprehensive, if the forensic searching of the property and the use of luminol wasn't carried out, then we've done a disservice to Jack and Lily. They're still missing. It's been 4 months. The dogs found no trace. Heat-seeking drones, helicopters didn't find any trace. The hundreds of searchers didn't find any trace. But maybe the silence of the dogs is telling us something. Not about what's there, but about what's not there. Maybe they're telling us Jack and Lily did not walk away of their own accord. Now then, let's see what everybody's saying, and then I'll introduce you all to Pansy. Because it's Family Friday. I'm giving my days of lives names. So Friday is Family Friday. So I'll always do something that kind of touches on something to do with the Crime Courtroom Confidential family. So let's have a look. CB, what have you said? They can't have processed Malehya's vehicle for evidence without telling her that that's what they were doing. So it may be that they're just not telling the public that that's what they did, and they did serve a search warrant on her. But the reality is they can't just say, oh, we'll tow it for you and then process it for evidence and then give it back. It's not how it works, because that evidence then wouldn't be admissible in court because it hadn't been obtained using the correct process. Polar Vortex, why would they search Janie's RV 3 times? That is a really good question that I have asked myself quite a lot. So 2 times is understandable because the first time she refused to let the police officers in but allowed a ground search and rescue team member in. Why she thought that that person would be less likely to be in a confrontation with her dog than the officer, I do not know. But it leads me to believe that because she would allow a search and rescue person but not an officer in there, that there was something that she didn't want an officer to see initially. That's my view. And I might be completely wrong, but that's the impression that I get. Later on, I think it was the following day, so on the 3rd, a police officer went in, and then on using a search warrant. So she wasn't completely cooperative, incidentally. I know that some people keep talking about how cooperative these people have been, but they haven't. They had to get the proper records request to get all of their material, including the phone records and everything. So they were cooperative to a certain degree, is how I will describe it. But they weren't this complete, open, do anything, I'll give you anything that has been described by other people. I think it was she let the ground search and rescue in. She told us that herself. In the video clips where she's talking in the FB group, she says that she let the ground search and rescue person in. She also says that Malehya allowed the officer in. So probably because they had the search warrant, because the RCMP told us that much. And then on the, I think it was the Monday, Janie said the officer came back in, or a different officer came in and searched again. Now, one officer coming in, I'm just going to say this, is not a proper forensic search of a property. One search and rescue individual is only coming in to do a sweep of, is there a live child in here hiding? That's what they're looking for. These kids have wandered off. Are they hiding somewhere? So that's all they're doing. And we've seen it many a time on videos that are released, body cam video footage where officers are kind of going into the house and they open all the cupboards and all the doors, looking any nooks and crannies to see if a kid squeeze themselves in there. But they're not at that point looking for evidence. And that's where they went wrong. Because to look for evidence, you need a forensic team, because a normal officer isn't going to do that type of search, usually. They will search for very obvious things. Generally speaking, officers go in with the viewpoint of, is there anything that just doesn't look right? Is there anything out of place? Is there anything there that shouldn't be there, or anything not there that should be? And that's what gives them an indication of where to focus their attention on. I get to watch quite a lot of searches because I live across the road from a family who have quite a lot of police involvement. And if I'm sat in my bedroom at my desk, I can see right into the house. But obviously I also deal with it on a professional level. So I think they missed a trick. I think that's probably where I'll leave it. And I don't believe, CB, I don't believe everything that the family say. I don't have any indication from the court records of exactly who went into which property at what time, because they don't deal with it at all. In the documents that they've provided, it's not referenced. So the only thing that we've got available to us is anything that the RCMP have said when they've been doing press conferences or releases. If they've said anything to the formal news stations, and what the family say. We don't necessarily believe everything that they say, but that's, we can just say, well, we have this information, we can put it in a box that's either reliable, unreliable, or a bit of both. What I will say is that Janie has a massive sensitivity around her camper being searched. We knew that anyway because she didn't let them in. And we have that from a verified source, that she didn't let them in originally because Belinda was there. But she goes back to it time and time again when she's speaking. So it's obviously a touchy subject. And usually something is a touchy subject because there is a problem behind it. So whether that is that there was something that either she thinks they've found, or that they could have found but didn't, or, the fact that she knew they were going to get a search warrant meant she had to effectively find a way to remove things, which wouldn't have been hard. I know that people have said, well, the officers were on site all the time, but there was people coming and going out of both properties all the time. There was family members staying, there was people going out to search and coming back in. So they weren't treating it as a locked down crime scene in any way. They'll have been keeping an eye on people, but not in the same way as like formal covert surveillance might have been. Anything that might be something of significance in the investigation, so knowledge of it getting out there might hinder the future of the case, seems to be redacted, and information about the trailer was. So I suspect that there might have been something in there. So I've also heard rumours, and they are just that, and I don't even know where they originated from, that the RCMP did find drug paraphernalia on the property. And I don't know where. So if that is the case, then although they say that drugs aren't forming a part of this case, that doesn't mean that there weren't any drugs paraphernalia or drugs there. It just means they don't think it was related to Jack and Lily going missing. So it could be that they were sensitive about, not something to do with Jack and Lily. I'm looking at it from every angle, knowing that there is a potential that there was something there around substances, that might have been the reason that they were all finding it a touchy subject. Yeah, so CB, in terms of the statistical percentages of how things turn out, they should be treated straight away as a potential crime and a missing persons case, and they should run in parallel right from the beginning. And actually, that's what the Major Crimes Unit person said, but it isn't what happened on the ground. And I think that's the difficulty here. Knowing that that's true is one thing, but if you don't get this type of thing happening in the area, knowing how to deal with it and actually do a parallel investigation is a completely different thing. Yeah, I'd love to have been a fly on the wall with the conversations that happened with the officers after that argument took place between the family members, but I don't think we're ever going to know the answer to that unless there is a trial somewhere later down the line that they allow observers into. Right, I'm going to shout. I'm just going to mute myself for a minute while I yell for Pansy. Give me a sec. Okay, she's here, and we're just going to see if I can change us into big so that you can see her. Oh, yeah. Hi, Pansy. Hi, Pansy. Yeah. Say hi to everybody. So this is Pansy. She is a Shorkie, which is a Shih Tzu crossed with a Yorkie. I think she's about 3/4 Shih Tzu and 1/4 Yorkie. And she's tiny and very baby-like and very cute. And acts like she's still a puppy, even though she's 5 years old. And it's a big difference to what we had prior to her. So whilst she's been here until very recently, we also had a lurcher called Chaos. So she was just the sweetest thing. She came as a foster dog when she was like 7 and stayed until she passed away of old age. But before that, we had 2 Great Danes. So to go from them to Pansy is highly unusual. And it took me ages to get the hang of the fact that this tiny little thing I could pick up. I mean, the Great Danes thought they were lapdogs. So it made a nice change to be sat on and not feel like legs were breaking. You've sunk. Sit back up again. Sinking down. Yeah. She loves belly rubs. And she wears a pretty flower along with her air tag so we can find her if she does a runner. She doesn't actually do a runner. She's the most Velcro dog I've ever had. Never had one that doesn't kind of like to dash off and explore things before, but she doesn't. She's she just wants to be with you all the time. And yeah, she does look like a pup, and it's really lovely because she acts like a baby. She likes to be carried like a baby and like, you know, in that position and things. So it's gorgeous, lovely. And then we've also got 2 horses. One who does live, I say with us, I don't mean on our property because we've got no actual land. It's just a normal suburban house, but in a nearby stable yard called Honey. She's 19, an old girl. We found each other by accident when we both really needed each other. So she's my heart horse, really. We've got a very profound connection. And then Odin, so she's the light coloured one on the intro video. She's 15 one hands for anyone who's horsey out there. So she's not big, and she looks after me. I have health issues, mobility issues, and she's my legs so that I can still go out and adventure. And she looks after me, but she looks after everybody really. So if there's any kids come to the yard and they want to sit on a horse, it's always Honey that they get sat on. Ponies are all naughty. So Honey looks after them. We know that if a little kid gets on her, she'll quite happily let them climb all over her and she doesn't bat an eyelid. but she's still, you know, if a teenager gets on her, she's quite happy to go for a really fun, energetic ride. And then the other horse is Odin. He's an Appaloosa. He's 16.3, I think, at last measurement. 7. They mature really late, so he could easily have grown. But he is currently living in Scotland. So he's gone to a lone home because he needed more than I could give him. And it was really hard. I've had him since he was 3. I backed him, brought him on. But having both of them to exercise, my daughter kind of lost interest after we'd bought him. So having both of them to exercise as well as working full time and generally running a house was too much. And he's very, very energetic, full of beans. We don't have great turnout in the winter where we are because we're kind of in not the best, most rural area. So he was losing his mind a little bit through the winters. So he's gone to live with a lady in Scotland. She updates me all the time and sends me videos of this beautiful place that she lives where we can just go out all the time, and they're in the middle of the kind of the base of the Highlands, so it's absolutely gorgeous. I did ask if she'd adopt me, but she said that she had enough humans. She didn't want any more. I thought that was really mean. Yeah, so that's the pet family. I do want another dog now. Chaos has gone, but somebody doesn't want to share her people. So we've got to find the perfect dog that she will get along with, because she is a bit mean sometimes for a little dog. Has little man syndrome. Yeah, that's Kimmer. That's literally what she said to me. She was like, "Yeah, no more humans. I'll have the other horse, but no humans." So I'd love to hear about your pets. If you want to send me pictures of them, my email address is right across the bottom of the screen, so drop them across to me, and it say on there if you want them to feature on part of the Family Friday, and if you don't, then I'll just admire them myself. But I will let you all go and carry on your probably daytime for most of you, whereas for me it's evening, late-ish evening, so I'm going to go and have a nice relaxing bath. So it just remains for me to say, look after yourselves, look after each other, and I'll see you next time. Night, everyone.